sometimes, I mean, it's almost like you can't even take a job as a public defender without the idea that you might lose some cases, because it is the prosecuting attorney of the government against your client, and you're part of the government too, but they have a little more, typically more resources than your public defender does. So you already have to be in some way resigned to losing. And what makes losing beneficial? Either you have to be a saint and not be afraid to lose because you want to do a good thing for society and give them your very best, despite the fact that you might lose and that might make your standing look a little bit less. Or you don't mind losing because every time you lose you can make more money, because somebody's going to give you a raise or pay you off, or you're working with the government so they reward you in some way. So there are different reasons why different lawyers, I think, have different motives, and what inspires them to work hard or not work very hard for their client. If they think they're going to lose anyway, why work at all? I mean, why make your boss mad? May as well just, let them do whatever they want and get your paycheck and move on to the next case. But with children's matters, if the state is taking innocent children, I mean, they're always innocent children, typically. If a state is taking kids away from innocent families, which is what CPS does, I mean, not all of them are innocent, but there's a large percentage that are, then you have public defenders who have a little slightly different kind of outlook, I think, about how to represent their client. First of all, they don't have some kind of a guilty conscience of, well, if I don't work hard for my client, they're going to go to jail for the rest of their life. I mean, there are a lot of criminal public defenders, they don't care if their client goes to jail for the rest of their life. Anyway, they're kind of numb and hardened to the whole system. But there are other public defenders that would feel really guilty and would carry that weight around with them, knowing that they had just allowed their client to get sentenced to 40 years in jail for something that they know, and they know that their client did not do. And they have to see that client, even if they don't see him that much, they have to see this crying client that they know is innocent. And if they have no conscience, then okay, that's not going to be hard for them. But some people, it will get to them enough to where they at least try to do something for their client. At least try to do a plea bargain or get the evidence that they need to prove that their client is completely innocent. But lawyers, public defenders, who are public defenders for parents who are being accused of things, they don't have that same kind of guilt threshold. First of all, they typically just, it's considered not to be a criminal court. So none of the public defenders are feeling guilty about, oh, that mom or dad is going to be in jail for the rest of their life because I didn't work hard. Or I just allowed my client, who I know is innocent, to be sentenced to 5 years for something that they didn't even do, but is because all I had to do was get some evidence for them. When you're defending parents whose kids are being taken away, I mean, some of these public defenders, the only thought that might cross their mind is, well, this other family looks nice enough and they have a nicer house. Well, the mother's not going to jail. She can just move on with her life. She just needs to move on. Her son has a mom and a dad now. And the house is much nicer. It's like 3 times as big. And personally, I'm really uncomfortable with this, like, extended breastfeeding, attachment parenting stuff. It kind of creeps me out. I believe in a good, firm spanking. Keep a child in line. Put them in their crib at night. Make them cry themselves to sleep. You know what all traditional Americans believe. And of these public defenders that are defending supposedly parents and their right to their child, they're looking at the parent and they're seeing this parent distraught. And they probably just think, you know, my heart goes out to you, maybe sometimes. My heart goes out to you, and I hope you can, you know, get ahead in other ways. But maybe you'll have more kids down the road. Maybe you can get married. Maybe, you know, your child can still see you. Your child can still visit you when they're older. And one thing that they never have to see, which I noticed a lot of the public defenders didn't want anything to do with, they never want to see what the condition of the child is that's separated from the parent. The public defender isn't defending the child or the toddler or the baby. The parent, the public defender, is supposedly just defending these parents, and typically, most of the time, this public defender does not have that much sympathy for a parent losing their child to the state. Because it's not jail after all. They just think it is something that, well, if the government wants this child for some reason and is placing that child in a different house that looks more quote-unquote American, like normal, as in a mom and a dad and a dog and a cat and a house and a cul-de-sac, you know, whatever someone's concept of normal is, if you're contrasting that with the mother who lives in a little trailer now because of what the state has done to her, and whose house is a mess because she's been tortured and doesn't feel like putting any of that energy that she has left into cleaning when all she's been doing is trying to get her child back and trying to get assistance from an actual lawyer that cares. All they look at, they don't even care about the torture aspect. Leave the torture to the CIA and the military intelligence and CPS, because they're all working together, and that's why they took your innocent child from your innocent hands to begin with. All that they have to worry about is making sure that sympathy doesn't interfere with the kidnapping. And to do that, most of the time, the public defenders who are defending the parents don't have any sympathy. They don't want to work for you, because if they think that things look halfway okay in a different family, they just think kids lose their parents all the time. It's not a big deal. The child will adjust. It's better for us. It's better for the country. It's better for my job. They don't care. For the single dad who maybe is even frantically trying to get their child, who maybe is a much, you know, possibly much better parent than the mother for some reason. And there are cases where the mother gets favored just because the state typically tends to favor the mother. And maybe the father is extremely, more than typical, really wants to have the children with him and spends a lot more time bonding and feels a lot more frantic and anxious about losing the kids than his wife, his ex-wife or someone does. Well, the state doesn't care about it, because what they go with is, they go with what their idea of looking the most normal is, and what's going to pass for cursory public inspection best. They want to leave the radical ideas to the elite. So don't you think that if you're poor, you get to be a radical. You get to be a radical or eccentric or revolutionary or genius only if you have the right amount of money. You get to be groundbreaking if you're over a certain income level, but don't you dare think that you are going to raise your children apart from the norm in any kind of way if you are lower income, because nobody's going to trust you. Why should your kid, you're poor, why should your kid, who comes from a family that doesn't have any kind of background or standing or lineage to speak of, or special papers, why should your child benefit from one-on-one attention and get ahead in the world when there are so many other elites that pay a lot of money and spend a lot of time making sure that their child is leaps and bounds ahead of yours? And you can't be trusted, because you might tip the balance. And they like to have the balance like this. One way or the other, but they don't want it like that. This, having the balance like this, means your child and their child are head to head. That's a little uncomfortable. Much better to be have some distance and be further apart than that. Because head to head is just kind of what if the other one wins something, or takes the job, or has the great idea, or does something better, or makes their way in the political world, or gets a lot of support from people unexpectedly, or attracts the attention of someone that the parents are hoping will be attracted to their own child, who is now grown. People don't like it when it's like that. They like to pretend that things are like that, but they don't really like the real balance, because it means you're head to head, and they don't want that. I've heard these stories about, oh, we're so liberal, we help parents, even single mothers. They pick out one little story that's out of the ordinary, sometimes CPS does, to try to highlight how they're so progressive and they don't discriminate. So they'll tell you about one story about some mother and her child that lived in a homeless shelter, really have been living on the streets. and you'll see an article written about it for publicity.